Aloha, and welcome to A Better Day. I'm State Senator Sam Slom, and thank you for joining us. For the next half hour, we'll try to provide you with an interesting and informative program and a very special guest. Well, here we are in July already of the year. Hope you had a very wonderful Independence Day. You know, we refer to it as the 4th of July, but it is Independence Day. It's the independence and freedom and liberty that many people fought and died for, to give us the luxury of being a free people. And sometimes we take that freedom for granted, and we don't understand, you know, what the sacrifices really were. And we complain a lot today. We got a lot of whiners complain about, you know, minor things, but we're talking about a time when people they pledged their lives, their fortune, their sacred honor, and many of the original signers of the Declaration and the Constitution lost all three. And they gave us that power of freedom and independence. The question is whether we know how to preserve it and how to be eternally vigilant. Well, the program is called A Better Day, and we say that because there are some political sayings around town here in Hawaii about a new day and this kind of day and that kind of day. But we want you to have a better day. We think Hawaii will have a better day in the future. But right now, the problem is getting by the present day. And the present day, well, we're still troubled economically. You know, we have our politicians telling us about how we've turned the corner and things have gotten better, but they really haven't. You know that. I know that. You know it by your standard of living. You know it by going to the grocery store. You know it every time you get your electric bill and your sewer bill and your water bill and all of those things. We need to make things right here. We need to make them better, and we can. That's the good news, but we haven't done so. We're in recess from the state legislative session. You know, we go from January till first week in May. And a lot of people always ask, well, what do you do during, you know, the recess? Do you go out and play on the jungle gym and go to a lot of lunches and all? Well, actually, we have a lot of things that we do. We have hearings and we have informational briefings. We have neighborhood board meetings. We meet with our constituents. And every once in a while, there's a special investigative committee. And for the state Senate, we probably will have a special session this summer because the governor has to make a new appointment for a Maui Circuit Court judge. And whenever there are judges appointed or boards of regents or any of the cabinet level people, then it is up to the state Senate. The responsibility is to advise and consent, to have hearings on the qualifications of the individuals, and then to vote on them, to advise and consent for their approval. So we'll probably be doing that this summer. And we now have all of the governor's actions in for the 2013 session, and we're starting to look forward to 2014. By the way, one of the other good things for you to know is that this is the time to contact your legislator. If you want to talk story, if you want to talk about pending legislation next year, this is the time to do it. It's, you know, less busy, and it's not the frenetic pace during the legislative session. So take advantage of that. And as always, if there's anything that I can do in my office, just call me, just email me, contact me, because my business card continues to say State Senator. So that means if you're watching from Ka'u or Lihui or on Molokai, anywhere else, and you have a problem or you have a question, you need some help, then call us, okay? We'll be glad to talk with you. Well, we try to provide you with interesting and informative topics, issues, and people in our community, because we've got some really dynamic and terrific leaders in our community. And my guest today is very special, and she is a leader, and she's a trendsetter, and somebody that has been not only on the edge, but I think to the edge and beyond on the new electronic journalism and electronic media. So please help me welcome Malia Zimmerman, who is the founder of HawaiiReporter.com. Aloha, Malia.
Aloha, Sam.
And thanks for joining us today.
Sure.
Well, tell us a little bit about Malia 101, because, you know, by looking at you, some people might be surprised that you are a local girl.
That's true. Born and raised in Hawaii, raised in Kailua, the best place on the planet.
Hey, no, wait a minute. East Honolulu. Go ahead.
East Oahu is pretty wonderful, too. And I went to Marinol School, well, actually, Leisure Dawn, Marinol School, Chaminade, and enjoyed graduating from Chaminade. So I've been here my whole life. My family's been here. My mom, my dad, my grandparents on both sides lived here. So we're now to our 4th generation in Hawaii. And we've been here a while. And my grandfather on my dad's side built a lot of the churches in Hawaii. and including St. Augustine's and St. Pius X. So he has other buildings as well. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, and so
it's interesting because the last couple of months, the guests that I've had, I mean, everybody, they go back 4 generations, 5 generations, and I'm not related to anybody here, so I'm the orphan out on the end. But it's always interesting to hear, about the family tree, and of course sometimes people want to prune that tree and all that. So when you went to Chaminade, you majored in journalism.
Yes.
And your background includes what? Print media, TV, radio?
Yes, well, when I first started, I interned at Channel 2, which was KHON, and now that's a Fox affiliate. Back then, I think it was an NBC affiliate.
I don't know. Joe Moore still doesn't like to admit that.
That's true.
Fox,
that's true.
Yeah.
And then I went in to work for Pacific Business News, and in between there, I had Michael Zimmerman, who was born in 1995, and after I interned.
Did that have anything to do with working in Pacific Business News?
Well, actually, it did, because I was able to write from home, and they were really good employers at the time.
Well, you were lucky because you were there with the founder, George Mason.
Yes,
who is an icon, who was a mentor of mine and many people here, and a great, great individual in this community.
Great role model for us, and he was such a good business person as well as a good writer and a good editorial writer as well, and so we really miss him. And have seen the paper change since he's left, so that's unfortunate. Yeah. But he did a fabulous job, and so went from PBN and also edited Hawaii Parent Magazine, worked for the Wall Street Journal, writing, worked for Fox News, ABC 2020. We still consult with a lot of different national and international media, have our articles reprinted from Hawaii Reporter in Bangkok Post, for example, lots of other publications, and we work with the watchdogs in Washington, D.C. called watchdog.org, and they have a variety of Hawaii Reporter type internet news organizations across the country.
Before we get to that and the detail and about Hawaii Reporter and all that, let's go back in your background. One of the things that you failed to disclose, I understand now the Merry Monarch just celebrated its 50th anniversary this year, and it's iconic and it's fantastic and all of that. But I understand a Howley blonde girl from Kailua actually was a participant many years ago. Is that right?
I was. I danced hula from the time I was about 3 years old.
How'd they let a Howley girl with blonde hair?
Well, first with the Beamers, and then I went and danced with Ellen Castillo from Kailua at Puka'i Ikupo o Kalani Hula Halau. And I learned Tahitian and Maori dancing and Polynesian dancing, and as well as hula. And we danced out almost every weekend, so it was a regular thing from the time I was about 10 years old, where we would go and perform at luau's and all kinds of birthdays and other kinds of events, graduations and things like that. It was always fun.
Did you do any bar mitzvahs?
Not that I recall.
No bar mitzvahs.
No bar mitzvahs. Not a lot of bar mitzvahs in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But anyway, I really enjoyed dancing with Ellen and all my friends that I made over the years, and we did go to keiki hula competitions that are held here on Oahu, and also to the Merry Monarch Hula Festival, and danced there many times and went to watch the event many times. But yeah, it was an interesting time back then because there really were no other blondes, except my cousin had come before me. She was a redheaded, but she was darker, a lot darker than I am, even though she had red hair. And yeah, it was quite an event, quite challenging to even get into the arena as a blonde, even in my uniform. So luckily I had a kumuhula who was very strong and believed in me and wanted to see me dance and stood up for me when some of the people that were there tried to have me thrown out and her thrown out because she had a Howley girl, a blonde-haired girl. But now, it's come a long way where there's troops from Japan and there's people of all ethnicities there. So it's gone from a Hawaiian only kind of thing, or actually there was other girls there, right? Filipino, Japanese, and so on, but no blondes. So now it's
so you broke the blonde barrier.
Right.
You were involved in all facets of media. You were also involved in some PR and political strategy stuff as well. You did some of that.
Oh, back in the day, yeah.
Back in the day.
Before journalism.
Okay, well let's jump ahead. HawaiiReporter.com. You founded the first daily electronic media in Hawaii, and how many years ago was that?
Well, that was in 1990. Or no, I'm sorry, 1990. I graduated from Chaminade.
Yeah.
And then spent over the years, between journalism and also working in, like you mentioned, public relations at McNeil Wilson Communications, and then went on to found Hawaii Reporter in 2001. And we launched our very first news day in February 2002. So it's been quite a few years.
Well, and let me ask you, first of all, why you started electronic journalism, because it was the first. You were the first. Secondly, what kind of rousing support did you get to do what you were going to do?
Well, there are a lot of small business groups and people who wanted to see their voices heard in the media, didn't feel like they were getting heard, and conservatives and libertarians and so on didn't feel like their letters were getting published in the paper. So they wanted a place to have their voices published. And we published not only conservatives, libertarians, and small business people, but anyone who wanted to have their letters published, because it's the internet, so there's unlimited space. And that gave us a well-rounded view of what was really going on in Hawaii, because so many different views were out there. And we started, like I said, in February 2002, and since then we published thousands and thousands of articles and letters and investigative reports. And that was the main reason I wanted to start Hawaii Reporter, was to be able to do investigative reporting on things that needed to be covered that weren't being covered in other media because of the way this town is. It's a big small town.
Yeah, but you're not suggesting there's corruption here, or corruption in government, are you?
Corruption? No, I would never suggest that.
Well,
just read Hawaii Reporter and you'll know all about it.
Tell us about some of the investigative stories you've done and the things that you've broken.
Well, let me see. Most recently, one of our fun stories was actually relates to the Capitol. It was about somebody who testifies here at the Capitol quite often, Professor Lawrence Boyd from the University of Hawaii. He's a labor professor. And Jim Dooley, who worked with me, went undercover into the professor's home and found out that the professor and his wife were running a prostitution ring from their home. And it's called the Volcano Girls. And how did we prove that? We stood outside their home, first of all, their apartment at 250 Ohua Street, called the number on the Volcano Girls escort website, and it rang inside their apartment, called it again, rang inside their apartment. Then Jim Dooley went and set up an investigation where he called the number Volcano Girls, set up a meeting with a prostitute, got welcomed into Professor Boyd's home, which is registered to Professor Boyd. It's the only home that he had registered to him. Went in to meet Kendra, the sexy Brazilian escort, and for $300 could have had an event, an escapade with her.
Yeah, but I think you're being too harsh on the good
just
professor.
To clear up the thing, Jim did not do that.
Oh, good. Okay, that's good.
We got it on tape.
Jim Dooley, one of the top investigative reporters ever in Hawaii.
Yes.
But I think you're being too harsh on poor Professor Boyd, because you know, Malia, it's a fact of life that you have to have 2 or 3 jobs in Hawaii in order to pay the high taxes and high employer mandates and everything else.
That's
Plus,
true.
he was probably pro-woman and giving women additional employment opportunities.
Well, the funny part is he's the labor professor at the University of Hawaii.
See, well, there you go.
So it all works out. But anyway, he denies that he did that. But in 2007, he denied he was running this organization from his home and pretended like he didn't know what was going on. But in 2007, the police actually made an arrest of a prostitute inside his apartment. And he claimed at that time that he just let her in to use the bathroom. He didn't know that she was a prostitute, and that she was going to have a policeman undercover in one of his bedrooms. So we got it all on tape. It was a fantastic report called the Volcano Girls Expose. I
understand they're going to make a movie out of it.
And actually, Hollywood is interested in making a movie out of it. So, so anyway, we've had lots of interesting reports. That's just a fun one that got a lot of play. We went undercover for 6 months and did an investigation on an illegal Thai lottery tied to Thailand, run by these 2 cute little old ladies who were on welfare, living in government housing with government subsidies. And we were able to prove through 6-month undercover hidden camera investigation that they were running this from their public housing home, and had hundreds of people betting on their Thai lottery. And it's all an all-cash business. So it was interesting.
Was
because
the FBI involved in this?
The FBI did a raid after they heard about it, along with the IRS, Homeland Security got involved, and the police. So they did raid the women's homes and let us in on the investigation. And we went along with them on the raid, not only at these ladies' homes, but also at the Chinatown small businesses where they operated and sold their lottery tickets through. You go to a vegetable stand.
This brings up a point why there are not too many investigative reporters in this town, or even in any other town. That is, you said it was a 6-month investigation. Now, if you're a newspaper and you have an investigative reporter, or even a TV station, it takes a lot of time, right, to document all those things, make sure that everything is set, and you have to pay a person to do that, and it's very expensive, right?
It is, and also just getting the equipment for a hidden camera or for undercover, or investing in a reporter that can spend that kind of time. So
of course,
it is pricey.
I'm more cynical. I believe that a lot of stories don't get reported on here because some of the reporters or the people in the media, they're more interested in working for the political person or someone else, and they don't want to uncover anything or, you know, make them look bad. Your biggest story, however, probably involved Kaloko Dam and the Pfluger family. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, in 2006, March 2006, on the 14th of that month at about 5:30 a.m., people may remember that the dam breached at Kaloko, and it
on Kauai.
On Kauai, and that's right by the Kilauea Lighthouse, kind of above that area. And so when it breached, imagine if you're standing at Niagara Falls and you watch the water coming over Niagara Falls for 8 minutes, how powerful that is. That's how much water left the dam, went down into Kilauea, and wiped out the town below. So the people that were sleeping, and it was still dark at that time, were suddenly hearing a roar like a jet flying right over them, and they didn't know what it was, and they came out, and some of them were lucky enough to watch the water go by, while others were killed. And so 7 people and a mother who was pregnant with 7 months pregnant, so a lot of people consider that 8 people were killed that morning. And the question was it an act of God? Because it had been raining for 40 days or 45 days, pretty heavily on Kauai.
We all remember that period of time.
Or was there a man-made reason for the Kaloko Dam to breach? And so that's what investigation we did. And we partnered with ABC 2020 and worked on that as well for 6 months with 2020 before we came out with a 22-minute report that aired in March 2007, so almost a year later.
But there were allegations that Mr. Pfluger, who actually owned the property and allegedly changed the dam so that it actually broke, he was charged with what, both civil and criminal penalties?
So the allegation was that he covered the spillway, which is the dam's main safety feature, and kept the water from going out. So it's an earthen dam. It's a 118-year-old earthen dam. And when you block the spillway, the water can't get out. So it fills up more and more and more, and then it makes its own spillway by breaching. It goes over the top. It's called overtopping. Goes over the top of the dam and eventually erodes it to the point where it explodes, and then the water comes out of a place that it needs to come out, so that it's because it just can't take the pressure. And so the question was, he denies that he did that, but there are witnesses that saw him covering the spillway, saw the machines up there, told him not to cover the spillway. They sent him letters, they sent him emails, faxes, called him and told him not to cover the spillway. So he had a lot of warning. So in the end, we were able to get aerial photos that showed how the dam changed over the years since he had owned it, and how he actually took down a mountain called Bertleman Hill, named after the Bertleman family here, and took the dirt and covered the whole dam area, including the spillway, under about 20 feet of dirt. So the Attorney General did charge him with manslaughter, 7 counts of manslaughter, because in Hawaii, I'm sure you've talked about this before, where you cannot charge somebody for a pregnant woman, the baby. The baby can't be considered a person in Hawaii under criminal law. But 7 people did die, and he was charged with 7 counts of manslaughter and 1 count of reckless endangerment. That's still pending. That was in 2008, November 2008. Still to this day, he's been able to delay this trial till now.
Well, it's an interesting issue, and it brings up the point about Hawaii's journalism shield law. We did a program about this a couple months ago with Sterling Morita of the Society of Professional Journalists and Gerald Kato, journalism at the University of Hawaii. The law expired June 30th, this past month. It was in effect for 5 years. It was recognized as one of the best laws of its kind across the country. And we discussed it then. There have been a lot of things. But actually, you were probably the impetus for that law being passed 5 years ago, right?
Well, that's partly true. My case, because I did get subpoenaed by Mr. Pfluger in the civil case, he was sued, and then he went and turned around and sued the state and the county, claiming it was their fault that the dam breached. But the plaintiffs against him included the victims of the dam breach. So he turned around and tried to subpoena me, not sue me, but subpoena me, and all my notes and sources and everything from the ABC 2020 report we did. So instead of going after ABC 2020, He went after Hawaii Reporter, which is a,
that's a feather in your hat, isn't it?
He's the 17th richest man in Hawaii, according to Hawaii Business Magazine, and I think he's considerably richer than that because he hasn't. Remember, he got charged with hiding assets overseas, a charge he was able to fight off and beat in the federal court. But during that trial, it came out that he's got about $71 million in assets, which is much more than Hawaii Business has reported. So. Larry Ellison has something on him, but most people don't.
Yeah.
And so to have that kind of person who has so much power and influence from an old family, it's been around a long time, and has so many connections coming after us, and we had to do a fundraiser to raise money to be able to fight off the subpoena. In the meantime, the legislature did introduce in the Senate. You helped with that in the House. Representative Ward, and on the Democrat side, it was Blake Oshiro that introduced bills, and Jeff Portnoy, who you had on your show, was able to help get that through as well, along with Mark Bennett, who's the Attorney General. So everyone came together to agree that journalists do deserve some protections, and that includes being able to have their sources and notes that are unpublished be able to be protected.
And I think one of the major issues was, hey, look, everybody talks about, let's get into the 21st century. Well, the 21st century, the reality is, we do electronic journalism. We used to have the afternoon paper and the morning paper. Now we don't. We just have the Star-Vitizer. But we've got many more sources of news. And the question was whether or not you, as an electronic journalist, should be afforded the same protections for sources of news and all that. It really, even though it was called the Journalism Shield Law, it really didn't shield you that much and from certain kinds of issues.
Criminal cases, we were not shielded at all.
Yeah.
This was just to prevent something like what happened with me with Mr. Pfluger, where he's got
harassment,
a civil case.
basically, right?
Right, because he was able to try to keep me out of court, so that I couldn't report on the civil case because we were doing aggressive investigative reporting, and he was able to try to intimidate me to get off the story. And so he could use his lawsuit, his legal powers to try to stop me from doing any further investigation. But on the criminal side, no. The Attorney General did subpoena me to the grand jury. I did have to testify there. I had no shield law protecting me. But the shield law did work in terms of civil case, and that's only fair. Why should somebody be able to subpoena me and take all my notes and sources and use it in a civil case against someone else?
But during this past legislative session, the Judiciary Chairman, Senator He, was trying to have a bill that was very convoluted, amending the bill. All you wanted, all the people in the journalism area wanted, was just to lift the end of it, the sunset provision. Yeah, the law was working well. There had not been any abuses and all that. Senator He wanted to define what a journalist was, wanted to tell how often you had to publish and sell your product and all that, which again, I mean, we're talking about the independence of journalism and what always was referred to as the fourth estate, and here you had government trying to muck it up, and in the end, the law expired. What fears or cautions do you have now? You don't have any shield or protection at all.
Well, just that we'll be back to doing a fundraiser to protect our, to hire Jeff Portnoy to go back to court to protect our sources. So, that is a big concern. And also people are less willing to come forward if they don't think they are going to be protected. They don't maybe want to be a whistleblower.
That's a big thing, because I deal with whistleblowers all the time, because they don't feel that they can go to their union leader or their department head or the governor or anyone else. They feel that they won't get those protections. So it is important to do that. And interestingly enough, the federal government, and under some of the Democrats, the federal level, have reintroduced legislation for SHIELD, although, again, the devil is always in the detail and the specifics. But hopefully we will get something done or something changed, and we'll recognize that we are in a new era of journalism and reporting, because that's how people get their news. They get it instantaneously now. Only old dinosaurs like me like the feel of the paper and the ink and all that. Everybody else is using their thumbs. So what do you see coming out of all of this, and the idea that the government, your government and mine, is looking over your shoulder and subpoenaing reporters and listening in on their conversation and all that? Is that a chilling effect? What do you think?
Well, I think it's very frightening. I mean, as you know, William Lajeunesse, who's a friend of mine from Fox News, he's interviewed you, was one of the people that the Obama administration was spying on because they were tapping his phone, getting his phone records and emails and that of his family because he was investigating the Fast and Furious gun case, and he was the most aggressive investigative reporter on that for Fox News. And he was breaking news stories all the time on that. So, because the Obama administration didn't like that, they targeted him. They also targeted one of his fellow reporters, and of course, you know that. And
then they went after AP, who had always been a cheerleader for the administration.
Associated Press, it came out that they.
Which is, you know, people ask me, well, you know, Richard Nixon did this with IRS back in the day too, and I said, well, I criticized him then, and I said at that time, if you can do it against liberals or group left, you know, organizations, you can do it against conservatives and right. And the point is, the government shouldn't be doing that. And the issue seems to be, do we want security or do we want liberty? You don't have to give up liberty in order to have security. That's what the government does. Well, look, we're running out of time, but I know you're not going to run out of stories, and so we invite everybody to read HawaiiReporter.com, and you have your own program, TV program, on Olelo.
On Olelo, Channel 54, called News Behind the News. Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m., Mondays at 1:30.
Well, Malia, it's been great having you, and we'll continue to follow this issue of journalistic independence and hope that there are more people like you that will develop more stories in Hawaii, because it's better for all of us to know the facts and to have more transparency, particularly in government. So, this is Sam Slom, thanking you for joining us, thanking Malia Zimmerman and HawaiiReporter.com, and telling you we can make it a better day. Aloha. See you soon.